Well, it is summertime here in South Carolina in the upstate under the foothills of the Blue Ridge Mountains. And I'm taking advantage of the fact that it's a cloudy day and not 95 degrees like it's been to come out and do a little light deadheading. And I noticed a lot of damage into this rose. Now the damage came from a couple years of drought. They were stressed. Also, we had a late freeze back in March, and that's kind of stressed them a little bit. So I thought I'd take advantage to show you what I do with a rose when I see it needs a good, radical summer cleanup. Now a summer cleanup can range anywhere from just a little bit of light work, trimming, shaping, taking out some twiggy growth, maybe even take out some old growth, to do what I'm about to do here, which is just clean up this plant completely. It's the middle of July right now. The reason I do this now is because the Japanese beetles have just begun to show up. And I know they're going to do damage anyway. So I'm going to go ahead and get ahead of them, clean the rose up, maybe even take off some of this really old foliage that I've got here and things like that. That way, when the beetles are gone in about 6 to 8 weeks and the rose starts to wake back up again around the middle of August where I live, I know that I'll be back in rhythms with nature and I won't have to worry about fighting off the beetles with things like Sevin dust and things like that are poisonous. Now, if I do have to do a little bit of beetle repellent, I use an organic product called Bye Bye Beetles. It actually repels them. It's available for organic plant health. But products like Sevin and things like that, they're poisons. They kill bees, honeybees, butterflies, birds, so that's the reason I don't recommend using those. So what we'll do now is I'm going to bring you in a little bit closer and let you see some of the damage that I'm seeing on the inside of this rose. Take a look at what I've got inside this rose. I've got dead canes here that are live, starting back to about here. This is showing some dead growth. I've got dead canes sticking out here as well. So quite a bit of that. So what I'm going to start to do is to take off absolutely everything that's dead, which is a fair amount on this particular rose, and that was mostly due to that freeze. And then once I've done that, even a cane like this that's dead on the top, I'm going to go ahead and take it back to where it's alive. Then later on I'll make the decision if I want to cut more or how I want to handle it from there. So that's what I'm going to do. So we'll start by taking out all of this dead growth. I've just begun to take the dead wood out, and I brought you back a little bit so you can get an overall view of what this bush looks like now before I really get started on it. I got this white sheet behind there. I think that might help you see it a little bit better. Before I get going, though, I want to talk a little bit about when you want to do this. I want to do this here in the upstate, like I said, around the middle of July. Why? Because I know I've got 2 or 3 months before a freeze comes. And here's the important thing about that. This is going to spur new growth. That's the whole point of this whole thing, okay? And I'm glad about that. But I don't want to spur that new growth so close to winter that when I do get a freeze, all that tender growth hasn't hardened off yet and it freezes. Now, if you live in a climate where you have no winter at all, don't worry about it. If you live way up north, you might want to do this like right after the spring flowering flush or something like that. But just make sure you do it early enough that you've got plenty of time for those canes to harden off before you get a freeze. If you find yourself in fall, it's the only time to do it, don't. Wait. Do this when you go prune the roses when the forsythia bloom in the spring. So make sure you've got some time. So I'm just going to keep working on all this dead wood. And while you're working, by the way, one of the nice things is make sure you take time and smell them. Because, man, bourbon roses smell good. There, that wraps up the dead growth. You can already begin to see the roses come down quite a bit in size. And all I've done is take out dead. That's it. Now what I also have, though, is a much clearer picture of this rose. Now, what I'm going to do with it from here really has a lot to do with the bush and how it grows and how I want to grow it, quite honestly. If I want to grow this in more of a shrub shape, I might take some of these long canes that I have here and bring them down into a shrub shape. However, if I want to decide, you know what, I'd like to go ahead and try to maybe peg this rose like we did in the pegging video, well then I'd leave this long cane and go ahead and start working and getting them pegged. But what I will do is work with a lot of this twiggy growth in the middle of this thing and cut it back to something substantial to get flowers on. Again, I'll bring you a little bit closer to this branch right here so you can see what I'm about to do. On this cane right here, as you can see, I've got a lot of little side shoots coming off. It's not really unlike a climber, basically. And these are kind of small and twiggy. There's not much going on. So I'm going to go ahead and find an eye down here. Doesn't matter if it's inward or outward facing, really, at this point. And I'm just going to take these back to something a bit more substantial. Because my new flowers can be born off that. And they'll be a lot sturdier when they actually go. Even this one, and I might just take that piece out. Again, I haven't done anything really radical here, but all I've done is just taken them back to a slightly, about the thickness of a pencil to get a little more vigor, because I know that's going to give me slightly better flowers. I'll work my way through the whole plant and do that, and begin to take this and take out some of this small growth and make it a little bit more substantial. That should about do it. It's already beginning to clean itself up a little bit. The bush is looking a little bit lighter, and the shape is starting to come back to it a little bit. Some of these that still have flowers on them, I'm going to leave them. I'm just going to enjoy the blooms for a while. And I've even got a bud over here. I'm going to let that bloom. And as part of the deadheading process over the next week or so, I'll bring those down a little bit. Now, I'm going to make a decision on some of these canes. This long one here, for example. I decided I want to keep this as a bush. I'm not going to worry so much about pegging. So I'm going to take this long piece here, and then much like we did on the pruning video, I'm going to go ahead and actually bring it back pretty good. And I've even got one here that's shooting across the middle. I'm going to go ahead and leave that. But I will go ahead and find an eye and cut it here. I might take that out during the winter when I prune in spring, but right now I'm not going to worry about it. So that's about what I've done. I've kind of just sort of cleaned out all the dead wood. I've taken some of these little twiggy things. If I can find it and get it back to the thickness of a pencil, I've done that. And just I'll take out some of the leaves a little bit. I might even use a little bit of lime and sulfur spray and kind of clean it up a little bit. And that's all there is to it. I'm basically finished now. I hope that gives you the confidence to get into the middle of summer and get tucked into your bushes and give them a really good trimming up, cleaning them up. You know, when I picked this time, like I said in the beginning, the Japanese beetles are coming. I'm trying to work with nature instead of against it. So what I've done now is just kind of lighten it up. You can see the shape that we've come up with as compared to where we were when we started. I've just basically taken some of these big canes back a little bit. I've taken these side shoots and cleaned them up to some degree. And I started, of course, by taking out all of that dead wood. Now, this is probably more radical than you might normally do in a season, but this plant was so stressed, and once I got all that dead wood out, I thought, you know what, let me push it back some, reinvigorate it, get some new growth into it, give it a bit of a rest from all of that stress that it's basically had. So that's basically all there is to it. Just keep in mind the most important rule, which is when you do this. It's middle of July right now, can you tell? And I'm about to not get a freeze until about November or so. So I'm really not worried right now about tender young growth being frozen off because I'm still 3 months away from winter. So if you have a climate where you don't get winter, you can do this any time of year. If you do get a winter and a hard freeze, try to get as early as possible in the season so that tender young growth doesn't get frozen. I'm just going to do a little bit more cleaning up, but basically we're about done. As you can see, this bush is going to look a lot better in about 6 to 8 weeks when it's had a chance to recover a little bit.